Hello, everyone, and today we are going to actually do a bit of a change up. So, in order to get ready for the Lent and Passover season, I thought we could actually do some Jewish poetry or poetry written by Jewish figures. Um, I actually recently purchased a book from the Princeton paperbacks and got the selected poems of Samuel HaNagid, translated by Peter Cole. So, some background. Samuel HaNagid was actually the Grand Vizier of Granada during the first Taifa period after the collapse of the Umayyad Caliphate in Spain, or Al-Andalus. So, he was actually known as a very good writer and is more traditionally known as probably one of the biggest figures of the golden age of Sephardic Judaism, or the Sephardic golden age of Jewish culture. Now, defining the golden and silver age of Sephardic Judaism is very messy and can be controversial. And while my master's degree in history does involve religious history, it's not my wheelhouse, and I highly recommend looking this up on your own. But needless to say, after the collapse of the Umayyad Caliphate of Spain, um, the first Haifa period honestly could be described as a very messy time because even though Al Andalus did give a large amount of cultural protection to both Jews, Christians, as being part of the people of the book, um, that doesn't mean that there weren't stresses affecting these communities, and especially after the Almoravid invasions and the rise of Berber influence in certain parts of Al Andalus, and the more tighter zealot interpretation of who is part of the book, who is protected, whose status is recognized, became very messy. And before we really deal with the quote unquote fall of the golden age of Sephardic Judaism, we have Samuel HaNagid, who was the Grand Vizier of Granada and was probably one of the greater poets of the Golden Age. And to start us off with, um, we will be reading from the After Psalms. And I should warn you, because of my problem with pronunciations of certain words, we will be mostly working with English translations and English wording. So, with that, we will be reading from After Psalms, and on and the first poem is on fleeing his city. Spirit splits in its asking, and soul in its wanting is balked, and the body fattened is vital and full, its precious being uneasy. But the modest man walks on the earth with his thought drawn toward sky. What good is the pulse of man's flesh and its favors when the mind is in pain? And the friends who fray me, their fine physique and slender thinking, thinking it's ease or gain that drives me. Pitching from place to place, my hair wild, my eyes charcoaled with night. And not a one speaks wisely, their souls blunted or blurred, goat-footed thinkers. Should someone unguilty hold back from longing towards heights like the moon? Should he wait, weaving its light across them like a man stretching taut his tense skin, until he acts they hear of his action, as he adds, then adds like the sea to his fame. By God and God's faith, and I keep my oaths, I'll climb cliffs and descend into the innermost pit, and so the edge of desert to desert, and split the sea, and every gorge and sail a mountainous ascent, until the word forever makes sense to me, and my enemies fear me, and my friends in that fear find solace. Then free men will turn their faces towards me as I face theirs, and soul will save us. As it trips our obstructors, the beds of our friendship are rich with it, planted by the river of affection and fixed like a seal in wax, like graven gold in the window dome of the temple. May Yah be with you as you love, and your love and your soul which he loves to be delivered. And the God of sentence sent Aegeus beyond both the sun and the moon. The next poem is The Miracle at Sea. Is there poise for the stumbling and fallen, or rest for the wandering and lost? And for me when I slip, or my fault when I fail, is there offering? By the lives of all who come to console and assist the stricken, by the life of each who came when I was in need and saw me panicked, could be there's never respite from anguish, and that desolate land is forever. But God restores what he levels, though he keeps his secrets and races his ways. Listen to a word, and know that not for likeness does the Lord sustain us on earth. And take your reversals with an open heart, silence and guarded thought. Harden your ears to the brokers of spirit, and turn your eyes from its whores, from Hophni at Shiloh, or Zimri and the woman from Midian, or Anon, and his brother's widow. Listen to a word and exalt the Lord in the house and street. When you rise and lie down, shudder for dread and anxiousness. Worry and let awe infuse you. For the God of beginnings unborn and unbearing, of lasting life without likeness, return to his grace and face him forever through fear and rebuke. I am the man who went down to the sea, which most of the year is loud. It was August, I chose to go, when the waves don't break in anger, and when we worked the oars and a wind came up as over a field of corn, and the sea like a slave did I ask, like a maid, and the sky was sapphire, and the water like butter or virgin oil. And the sailors told of all that they've seen, of wonder or on board, and one spoke of a marvelous creature, and another called it a beast. And the captain answered, none of you know of the miracle sea, and you haven't fathomed a thing. There exists a monster whose name is Karka, singular among the abysmal shapes. It devours all who feed on each other and kills the survivors with fright. It overturns ships and fleets with their crews. In its mouth they flip like a chariot. He hadn't finished his sentence when lowing and raging the creature appeared. I heard it thunder or the sound of a throng, seemed still alongside it, and I looked at its terrible form, wrought like a fish or book like Leviathan, the tortuous serpent like a palm tree in stature, its head huge as a galley with oars, its face haughty like a hill, its eyes like pools, its spouts like a furnace, its brow like a wall, its mouth wide and deep as a cave, quenching its thirst would empty a river, with its lips like swollen wineskin on wineskin, and between them the whole, as though in a coat of mail, its flanks was white, its back green, its neck like a tower, its belly a mound, its fin like a polished sword, and its scale like a shield made red, its girth to us seemed like a cliff in the heart of the sea, and it circled the ship. Though the fin was still, and swam alongside it, and rose on its tail, like a cedar or climbing vine, and everyone's heart melted like wax, or like water in the whirlpool engulfed us. Then I calm and steady my soul, as the lamb on the day of her slaughter goes dumb and called on my Lord, as others beside me called on their own, like Ashma. And I said, in truth, in one way or another, transgression takes the guilty soul. If Jonah was swallowed up by the sea and vomited onto dry land, in his righteousness, what of me? My Lord, let me live, who wakes from his sleep. If this is reward for the work of my hand, may my sin be absolved. Then it sank in the dark of the sea, like a soldier that God has thrown in its parting. But under the ship it threatened as our hearts died, our breath failing, and the Lord rebuked the being for the moment returned to its depth. The little worm saved on a pitch-covered bough, he raised the dead from Sheol, and saved the swallowed with a hand held high. The nautical wizards were astonished and wondered how it could happen. With their ship trapped by Carcana, the accursed, and I told them, such is deliverance for those who know the great glory of the Lord in his fullness. He sends salvation to those who admit him, and vengeance to those who provoke his wrath. The sea is his and all its creatures, and the waters below, which are vast, he hangs them on nothingness. What is a beast besides the rock, who has shaped it and granted its breath? Then endowed it with power. I thank the Lord with a song of redemption. My mouth will remember. Acknowledge the rock beyond creation, without completion, and grant the truth of resurrection. That the dead will rise from dust. That the book of Moses we have in our hands is true and composed with perfection. That the words of the sages are worthy and their study is sweet, and reward for the righteous will follow, as the dead for their sin and secret receive their recompense. That the Lord rules over land and sea, and the sky and great bear above. That his fear in the lines of my face is drawn, as his law is drawn through my blood. Next is a curse. Intrigue haunts my heart like a pennant on a ship's mast in a storm, and exile is ink in God's book, across my soul and every shore, and all whom wandering is written are driven like Jonah and scavenged like Cain. Next is the apple. I, when you notice, am cast in gold, and the bite of the ignorant frightens me. An apple is filled with spices, silver coated with gold, and others that grow in the orchard beside it, bright as rubies. I asked it, why aren't you like those, soft with your skin exposed? And it answered in silence, because boors and fools have jaws. The grapes was created for gladness to banish our grief, and virgin oil for pleasure, and the apple to sniff. Those apples in a bowl resemble the high priest's jewels, so keep them far away from the hands and teeth of fools. Why does the loud mouth in company whose tongue never cease to wag break no teeth on biting the apple and downing the gold not gag? The covenant of brothers at court while drinking is dual. 1. Pull out that tooth that would bite the apple. 2. Banish the fool. Next is jasmine. Look at the jasmine whose branches are green as topaz and its stems and leaves, while its blossoms are white as bedlam, with carnelian red in its shoots. It looks like a pallid boy who's shedding the blood of an innocent man with his hand. Next is the gazelle. I give everything I own for that gazelle, who, rising at night to his harp and flute, saw a cup in my hand and said, "Drink your grape blood against my lips," and the moon was cut like a D on a dark robe written in gold. Next is the fawn. I give everything I own for that fawn who betrayed me, my love for him locked in my heart. He said to the rising sun, "You see how I shine and I dare to be seen?" And the circle was set in the sky like a pearl in a dark girl's palm. Where's that coy gazelle is next? Where's that coy gazelle and the scented fawn with his calamus and myrrh? As the moonlight cancels the stars, my friend rising cancelled the moon. He sang to me softly and leaned on the giver of song to swifts and doves in their season. He tried to say no, but said slow, and I did as his tongue required. He wandered wrong, but said thorn, and I rushed to the hedge of those roses. Next is, in fact, I love that fawn. In fact, I love that fawn, cutting roses in your garden, which is why I earned your wrath. If you could see him, the others would never find you. Scrape me some honey from your hive, he said. I'll have mine from your tongue. I replied, then he bristled and said to me sullen, and sin before the living God. The sin's on me, I answered, my lord. I'll show you a fawn. I'll show you a fawn who'll wound your heart with his eyes, just as you are wounding mine with yours. He's a blessing who made your heart cold as snow when I called you, and sent up flames from you inside me. He who sends strength in you and your weapons over the men of arms in war, where a few are slain with 1,000 arrows, while you with one slay 1,000 more. They stole my sleep. They stole my sleep, now I'll steal theirs, and shoot at them as they shot at me. They won't find rest, as the woman said. Not mine, not thine, divide it. His brother's illness. My limbs thicken with strong premonition, and my vision blurs with tears as it sharpens, and grief is budding along my mind, like weeds after rains that smothers the furrows. Pleasure recedes and sickens me now. What good is sweetness when one brother lies ill? Let me make account, and not, my lord, him for my weakness. If I err, would you punish another, then why the error remaining within? On the death of Isaac his brother. I rushed to my brother, who was, they told me, now weak in his illness and failing. When a messenger approached me and was still, "Is Isaac alive?" "Already dead," he answered. Then I cursed him, "Be deaf and have dust in your mouth, and learn in your life each instant of sorrow. May your parents mourn you. Haven't I called for a doctor? And hasn't he healed many others like Isaac? How could such wealth of spirit falter? Prized by his peers, a gift to his people, he sleeps. And he said to me, can one who took ill and then died awaken, whether poor or in power? First child of my mother's death, angel, your spectre, soon the sun setting will turn you, and by evening stones divide us, earth's dust your shroud. Neither splendor nor wealth could help you in your affliction, neither capital nor cup I kissed you. Your heart wouldn't have it, though you lay like a healthy man asleep. I wept, but you in reply your tongue held from speaking, and you slept. The sleep of forever, the rock topples and pours across his design. They'd given you wine, and the cup of ancient death I'll drink from soon. Why should I force when custom requires, when my heart feels like a moth-eaten shirt? And why mourn in the dirt beside him when thinking reminds me of slime-filled pits? Grief has broken my body's bearing. Why should I shatter pitchers and cups? The torn clothing will long be sewn when my heart still stings, as though ripped with thorns, and the walls of my strength will weaken with pain after my clothes have been beaten and washed, and sorrow will cling to my leaning frame like staves in the rings of the ark. But rest and happiness beyond my brother will hover forever, strange to my mood. My language, I asked of you in my life, to lift up a sound of lament for my brother and father, who was father to all who were broken in judgment and the widow's deceit, who was generous and opened his doors to the street when others were locked, who heard as one the heifer and bear, and none devour and none make prey. I bathed him and dressed him and placed him in bed, and into my mouth came the voice of labor, and I brought him to his grave. My clothing torn, my family gathered, and I rose and went down and helped him towards the world below. They said he has taken him up, and I thought, let him take me instead. And they said, time will heal your hurt and you'll rest. And I answer in pain, on your balm of time and all rest beyond, my brother, a curse. Take my strength, my soul, for grief such as this can't carry. And I return my spirit anguish. God be gracious to you, my brother, buried the day before yesterday. Now my mind is bitter. Peace to you who maybe hears me, calling with all my power. Answer me, can you find my voice through the weeping? And how have you slept in your tomb of dust below? Have your bones let go? Do your teeth show through? Has your life's blood fled in a night as tears fled falling from me? Firstborn of our Father, I've left you with him who drew me, and on my word, you'll move towards peace through my promise. Tell him, please, whom I long to see. My hands released him to lostness by the life of the living. God, for the world will be in my blood, like fire until I'm dust, and the dust at his side. Could condolence persuade me? Is there solace or hope in his wake? And what is knowledge beyond my brother, or life after leading him down to his grave? Please don't stare and save your speeches. Thank you for coming, and stand over there opposite. Yes, further off. Recommend me now to the jackal who mourns, who'll befriend me. Then tell him to wail while I wail, and see whose haughtiness carries. But don't, friends, like my suffering to suffering, or this breach by Isaac's death to your breaks. Give up heart on bringing him back on ever again seeing his likeness. Pledge yourself now to abjectness, and then whenever you ask for strength in your grief to dying his death. When the name Isaac is called out across me, and my soul splits, and my bitterness shows, and others confront me upright as I fail, their mouths full of laughter, their voices a song to my fall. I act the horizon, like Joseph as they gather about me. How could I weep when they take such pride and sing me crush my brother with my own hands hidden in sorrow, as though I never loved him like soul as a child not shared a room and the way to school, whom I drew down to the pit with my will. Death's shadows and dirt have replaced me, as though you've never been for me strength and refuge in pain. Quicken my being born to the dust, and keep me from looking upon my wretchedness. I think of you now in bed as I rest, and the memories steal sleep from my eyes as I eat. I recall you fasting in darkness, and the meal in my stomach is venom within. And I think of your thirsty in the grave as I drink, and my tears unsweeten my water and wine. Light of my eyes which dim, and my wound which whitens, was it you alone we left that day of my ruin? What about others? My brother, did you long for the missing family around you, and draw to you ghost-like spirit to warm you? Their dying won't help and measures my own. Now I despise the lids of my eyes, and forever will loathe my slumber. What was done to your corpse will be done soon to mine. From the first news of your parting I feared for my failings. Let your death be reproof both to fools and the wise. A brother is in me whose letters were like water when my heart was thirsty. Now when others come, not his, the thought of him writing within me is fire. 12 months have passed and you still haven't fled the fowler's snare. Are the clods of earth so sweet you now that to us you prefer worms and decay? You were the best of us. Come back to your place with the elders, and we'll talk of my battles and latest campaigns. Though how could he rise whose flesh is rotting, whose bones are like dried trees imprisoned in earth, as his soul is in sky, as the moth maggots eat through his leather shroud and into his skin like leaves. Time which betrays us, why do I long for my brother and thirst? What does it mean if you've stolen him from me? Will he return? How and when? My eyes with his death have dimmed. Does it please you to see me now, blindness, friend? For you, Isaac, long in the grave, and not to return. I weep and lean. I bought with your death heart's knowledge and craft, which during your life confused me. I thought for my sake you live forever, but time meant other. A psalm to the hearer, of prayer in my spirit forever. To praise him is proper, whose metes out justice to the children of men, like the sun for all revealed in its sky, all who govern hard in their power. First he created youthful and soft like grass, and like labor, like everything born, and the poplar and oak, but brief he created strong in its birth, and weak in its growth. And wherever it festers in a thinking heart is lost. From God without name to people is grace, neither language nor speech can measure. I said in my morning despair would quickly wear through my heart, which with worry like an alley had narrow, but now with solace is wide, and my sorrow sheds like the flesh of my brother. If my heart is stirred and at times I weep, and the sadness still rises within me like hosts, more often than not, I'm calm like a man whose heart is empty, his burden light. So the rock wounds and then heals the stricken. May he who blankets the sky with night and wraps my mother's eldest with dust forgive my brother his errors, and in his grace remember his goodness, and with our fathers who were pure and his treasure count him as treasure.